Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm finding out how many knights I need to defeat the Magnus bot. We'll start with 2 knights and add 1 knight each game. Also, our second live stream ever will be this Thursday at 2 p.m. So any of our friends who couldn't join last time because of the time difference can join in and come challenge me to a game. In case you're forgetful like me, I'll make a community post the day of the stream as well. Let's get started with 2 knights. Alright, that was pretty unsurprising. Let's go ahead and add a knight. Alright, I'm back with 3 knights, and we weren't doing very well with the bishops last episode until I had quite a few bishops. So I'm not particularly optimistic about this, but I will try to develop my knights towards the center and at least make the best of this. So we have a point of reference later. We have 2 pins. Obviously the king in the center is going to be a problem. I don't think I have a way to defend both of these knights at the same time, and they're both pinned to the king, so I've got to let one of them go. Or I can just wait for him to capture, remove the guard, and come in and take my knight on f2. So I'll make the waiting move. We do get that check that we'll try to block. This knight is pinned as well. I'm sure pins will be a big problem in this game until we can start counterattacking with our own forks. So we're running, and we get mated. Let's move on to 4 knights. All right, we're back with 4 knights, and one of you guys actually asked me how I decide how to place the pieces. And the truth is I don't really have a specific method. I just try to do whatever's most intuitive. So we're developing towards the center. We get checked with the same thing. Obviously this time I'm not going to play knight to f2 because we already know that loses to bishop b4. So I'll move my king out of the way instead. Okay, we get checked on the other side. I'll move back. We can get a threefold. Okay, e4 hits the knight. We'll drop back and target the queen. We do get checked, so we have to block. And bishop to b4 puts pressure on this knight. Maybe looking for e3, but right now that's covered. I can't walk away with my king or else we lose d1, so I really have no choice but to kind of sit tight for a second here. I'll go ahead and move my knight back in the meantime. Okay, we get d4, he's going to force e3 to happen. I'll try to move my king out of the way. We get checked. If I move back, this falls, so I'll at least try to run away, make a break for it. We'll take this pawn. Check, obviously drops the knight. We'll just scoot over, check again. And we have no legal moves that are good. We're officially in Zugzwang. So we've got to move this knight somewhere. Wow, he doesn't even take it. Wow. We get bishop to f3 check. There's only 1 legal move. Oh, mating me in style. That's pretty hardcore. That never takes the knight. He just makes this fence in front of my king. The knight can't defend because it overreaches. And we get queen to d1 check instead. All right, moving on to 5 knights. All right, we're back with 5 knights. And the turtle shell strategy is still in play here because my king can be very easily exposed. I will try to crawl into the center, but right away we're hit with e4, so he's going to push me back. e3 isn't a threat because we have that square covered, but we already know that d4 follows close behind, so we will move back. Oh, we do get a5. It's so funny that even when it feels like there's a significantly better move, like d4 in this case, the bot always finds a way in these videos to play either a5 or h5, but most often it's a5. So we'll just hang tight here for a second, trying to hold on to the position. Put a knight in front of the pawn to see if I can stop it from promoting, but it looks like we can't hold on to this knight at all. I'm going to have to interpose with a different knight. We get checked. There's only 1 legal move. Drops the knight. I mean, we're just super duper cramped in this position. Wow, not even any legal moves for my king. I have to move my knight somewhere. If I take this pawn, we drop this. But it's not like there's a lot of better options anyway, so might as well take a pawn. Check. I mean, his ability to just ignore the piece is kind of crazy. Obviously, what he's seeing here is the king moves over and then there's mate. But it's just really interesting how it manages to do that. Right? If he had taken the knight, we could have played king to c3 at least. All right, moving on to 6 knights. All right, we're back with 6 knights. And since I know this is losing anyways, I might as well try to play for some counterattack. We get e5. Let's hit the center. We also protect h4 on the way. Unfortunately, we're met with e4, which kicks the knight, and probably queen to h4 is next. We'll go ahead and play back, try to target e4. We do get that check. We have to move the king out of the way. d5 reinforces the center, so I'll attack it. Bishop g4. The king moves into the middle of the board. Knight to c6. And d4 might be an issue here soon, so we'll bring this other knight out as well. Knight to f6. Wow, this is really crushing because my king is in the center, so just any kind of normal development is enough to win the game here. I'll go ahead and develop myself as well. Bishop takes, sure, I'll take back. Knight to g4 check, forces my king out to the center of the board. Knight to f2, style points on me. Okay, and oh, that's a pretty tough checkmate. Knight takes on d1, king hanging out in the center, so obviously he gets checkmated. I'll try to be a little more careful with my king on this next one. Moving on to 7 knights. All right, we're back with 7 knights. Let's go ahead and approach the center. Try to create an attack on that e5 pawn, which always makes its way to e4. I'm assuming when I have more knights, I'll have to sacrifice for that pawn. We'll head back. Okay, keep developing. He does give us the opportunity to sacrifice, and honestly, I'll take it because I can't just keep allowing my center to get consumed. So I'll sacrifice my knight for the center. Oh, and then queen to e7 pins it, right? So I'll defend my knight, f5. Not really the best position. Okay, knight to f6 works just as fine as well. Not as forcing as the pawn, but it probably works. We'll try to defend again. Okay, he gives up the knight to make way for the pawn. That works. Oh wow, bishop to f5. Interesting. He decided to instead develop all of his pieces because he realizes that this is the only knight that can reach this one. All of the other ones are too far away or awkwardly placed. So we'll go ahead and cut off the pin at least. We do lose the knight, and this knight looks like he has to retreat. Knight to d4 just takes because this knight is pinned. So we head back. Bishop to b4 is check. Yeah, he's just styling on me at this point. Long castles check. Move over. Bishop d2 forces the king back into this discovered attack. Bishop to e3, we're back to the center. Queen to h1 forces me to give up the knight. King into the middle, and mate. All right, moving on to 8 knights. Okay, we're back with 8 knights, and yes, I did conveniently place it in the center of the board. Knights are generally slower, and frankly, I need them in the middle, so we'll play knight to c2. e5, I'm going to try to challenge that right away with knight to f3. e4, he leans into the position, right, because I have to head back. I'm sure d5, f5, any of those combinations is good enough. In fact, if knight to d2, I have so many knights at that point that queen to h4 could be an issue. I block, bishop d6. We might be looking at forced mate there, so I'm just going to head straight back instead. Okay, d5, regular development. Knight to c6. Funny enough, I have a lot more knights than he does, but I'm obviously, but I'm the one that has to look out for forks because, for example, knight to f2 could be met with like d4, e3. There's kind of some tricky ideas here, so I'll play knight to f2. h5. See, we get 2 of these weird bot moves in one video now. We'll move over because I'm kind of concerned about queen to h4 in some future, and even like bishop to b4 could be kind of annoying. King to d1 makes it so that bishop g4 is the only annoying move, so we'll move over knight to e5. I wonder where he's looking to put that knight because both of these spots lose a pawn. We'll go ahead and keep developing. Okay, h4. Right, I can't move forward into the position anymore, so I have to head back. Okay, these knights are going to be hard to work with, not only because obviously they're knights and kind of uncomfortable to work with, but also because they can get in the way of each other pretty easily. To the point that I'm looking at this position and I'm not totally sure what's at my disposal. Knight c3 walks into d4, e3, forks the knights. So I guess we'll just hang tight back here. c4, he's just walking his pawns up because it's perfectly safe. Knight to d3, I can't even trade because I walk into a fork. So let's see, both of these knights are defended, so that should be fine. Knight to e3 now, d4 doesn't work because I have 2 knights on that pawn. Okay, bishop to c5, boots the knight. Oh, and if I move back, I lose f2. All right, so I'll move the f2 knight out of the way for now, and then try to get my knight back to f1. Okay, knight to f6, I think now I can play back. Okay, queen to a5. I'm pretty happy with this game. We're 13 moves deep, and we've held on to all of our knights. So it's getting a little bit better. We get queen to a5. This is such a disgusting position because it doesn't look like I have any comfortable moves that I can play here. It's like my knights are all protecting each other in a sense, but they're also holding each other back because they need one another. So there's not like bishops, for example, can move up and down diagonals anywhere and they still protect the whole diagonal. Knights move and they completely occupy a new set of squares. So they protect the square they just came from, but they control a completely new set of squares. So for now, I'll move my knight back to e1. Okay, we get check. We have to pin the knight. Knight to b2, king to e1 is forced. And we do get mated. All right, moving on to 9 knights. All right, we're back with 9 knights. I'm going to start developing towards the center as usual. I have to do something about these pawns, right? Because e4 is a possibility. d4 is also a possibility. e4 I'm less scared of because I have 2 knights on that pawn and he only has 1 pawn defending it. So I can sack a knight for 2 pawns. Versus on d4, I can't sacrifice right now, so I'll add another knight. Okay, we do get that bot move, a5, probably looking to kick the knight out of the way, but I'll keep developing. Okay, we do get e4. I'll jump into the center, why not? c5, jump further into the position. Okay, a4 boots the knight. I really don't have a choice but to move back here. Knight to f6. I think this might be the furthest we've gotten to his position so far, so I'm kind of happy with that. Knight to e3, d4, d3 is an issue. I can't even develop towards the center because of these pawns. So I really just have to be ready to sacrifice. I'll play knight to a3 to stop this pawn in the meantime. Knight c6. I'm quite happy with my cocoon and I don't want to break it, so I'll probably look to move one of these two knights. If knight to e3, d4, I can move my knight. d3 should be okay. Okay, we get knight to e5 instead. It's very hard to predict what the bot is going to play because there's no theory when you're playing with 9 knights against a full position, so we're kind of just making this up as we go along. If I try to stack pressure in the middle, d4, so I'll head back with my knight. Knight to f3, oh, knight to f3 forces a trade, and he gets the fork. That's pretty good. All right, knight back towards the middle. I'll take back. I'll try to hang on here as long as I can. Bishop d7, put some pressure in the middle. No, d4. Ugh. Not the best position I've ever been in. I can't even retreat because of d4. I can't even make room to retreat because this knight needs to defend the knight on b5. So I'll just move my pieces back towards the center. c4, okay. Takes. Fair trade. Okay, but he moves the knight out of the way. He can get to a1 now, pretty much unstoppable. Not completely unstoppable though. We did get knight to a1. We get bishop b4, check. If I move out of the way, check. Maybe knight to d4, bishop back. It's obviously losing, but we stand a fighting chance. Okay, check. Let me get out of the way, mister. We do get the check, knight to d4. He does double up the bishops, which is quite unfortunate. And let me see how I can hang on here. All right, the knights are falling like flies. Not much more that I can do in this position. f1 is gone. And that is mate. All right, moving on to 10 knights. All right, we're back with 10 knights, and the strategy hasn't changed. We're going to try to attack the center. I have more sacrificing potential now, basically, so I have to play with that. h5, I'm so sick. I'm so sick of seeing a5, h5. I mean, sincerely, it's kind of annoying because he can just push. I have to sacrifice. Same with the center pawns. Push. I have to sacrifice. So I'll keep this knight over here for now. Knight to c6. Develop towards the center. Knight to e3, d4. Looks for d3. So I'm kind of just holding on for dear life here. Okay, e4 pushes right through the middle. All right, the issue we're facing here is that these pawn storms are basically unstoppable. Even if he chooses to give away a pawn, it makes me trade knights, and then that makes my position generally a lot weaker. I'm probably going to add 2 or 3 knights for the next game because this is not even close. Okay, he does get the breakthrough. I have to sacrifice. Target the queen, because why not? All right, we're forced to trade. This knight is as good as gone, and this knight is also pinned, so there's even ideas of like bishop b4 here, with almost what is checkmate. Right, he takes the knight, fair enough. All of this is winning for him. a2, he insists on the extra queen. He probably could checkmate here if he looked long enough. All right, we do get bishop to g4, we'll head back. This is pinned, so unfortunately I'm still on the run. Ugh, everything's falling apart. All right, and we do get mate. I'm going to add 2 knights for this next game to give ourselves a fighting chance. All right, we're back with 2 knights, and I think we have a little more potential now. I don't think I'm going to win this still, but at least I can fight for the center, right? e5, I'm anticipating it, so I can play knight to f3. Sacrifice. Easiest sacrifice of my life. I'll trade, and if I can trade down hard enough, I might actually have a chance here. a5, these rook pawns are always going to be an issue of mine because they're basically guaranteed knight sacrifices waiting to happen. At least I've gotten the center off my shoulders, which from a practical standpoint is pretty big for me. I do still have to play ready to sacrifice for these lateral pawns, and I really don't want to allow it to get too far because he might even decide to just let it sit. So I'm just going to trade off right now. Okay, a1 is under attack. We'll move it out of the way. We did get forked there pretty neatly, so not much I could do about that. Queen back to b7. Knight to c4. I guess it's technically a weak square. Right, this pawn storm is pretty close to unstoppable. but I will keep some knights around here just in case an opportunity arises. Okay, he does castle. It's really interesting how as Magnus decides that the position is less and less winning, he starts deciding the castle. Now, how winning or not winning this is, I'm not sure, but okay, knight to g4. Go ahead and offer a trade with the knight on e3 because I'd like to keep this cocoon around my king, right? If not, he can start putting pressure on my pieces, so I'll trade. Bring another knight as reinforcement. And he brings a pawn as reinforcement. Fair play to him. Okay, we need all the pieces around the king now, and he forces my hand on the outskirts of the board, so I'm going to have to sacrifice for that. Okay, we will hope and pray because there's not a lot more than that to do in this position. All right, and we do get mated. Let's add one more knight. All right, we're back now with, how many knights do we have? 7 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're back with 13 knights now. I've also started thinking about the fact that even if I do get into a better position, I probably will need 3 knights to deliver checkmate, assuming I take all of his pieces. Because even 2 knights against another lone king is still a draw here. So I have to be a little bit precautious. A little bit weary of how I actually approach this position. Okay, we do get that lateral pawn movement. I will start lining up some knights to hold back that pawn. We do get g5. Let's go ahead and develop some more knights. g4, pretty natural move. If takes, 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 I think I'm okay with that. Okay, we do get d4, which allows another sacrifice of a knight for 2 pawns. So I'll accept that as well. Okay, knight trade, fair enough. Develop towards the center, almost always a good idea. a5, looking for that passed pawn. And I think I can start looking for attacking chances here. I was thinking like knight to e5, knight to g5, but that drops the knight, so I probably need to bring more pieces into the attack. How about this knight to e5 instead? Okay, f5 pushes right past, so I guess it's not a weakness anymore. And it does force my knight back because e5 isn't available anymore, so f2. We get c5 in response. Knights are usually going to be well placed in front of a pawn, so I'm thinking here I need to start maybe knight to a4. I'm also concerned because I just realized there's f4 on the table, so I should probably move this knight out of the way before that becomes an issue. I'll play knight back to e2. Okay, rook to h6. Play knight to a4. Queen to c7 targets this knight, but it's defended, so knight to c4. And I like these knights because they can never be kicked from that position ever, basically. I think now we can play knight to c3 and look for knight to b5. Okay, we get the trade, which is totally fine. Knight back to f6. We'll go ahead and target the queen. I'm not sure where she's moving to. Okay, c6, fair enough. I'm going to go ahead and defend this knight, because if we lose this knight, I think I still have knight to c7 and then take the rook. Okay, go ahead and play check. Take the rook. Queen recaptures. And I think I just need to keep throwing knights into his position. So knight to d3 looks as good as any other knight move. Knight to d7. This pawn can't move because there's knight takes f5. So I'll play knight to f4 as well. Queen to c6 hits this knight. Probably just retreat to c3. Bishop g7 again hits this knight. I can't centralize because there's too many attackers, only one defender. So I guess this knight moves back again. Let's move it forward, actually. I was going to move knight to e2, but I realized I'm playing kind of passive, so let's play knight to b5 instead. Queen jumps into f3, so I might have to just make a break for it with my king. Okay, rook to h2 puts pressure on this knight. Again, I can start feeling the pressure of the position a little bit. I'll play the knight back. He does sacrifice the rook for 2 knights, which makes perfect sense. That's probably winning for him. And I will drop... Oh, I can't even drop my knight back because he'll take whatever I recapture with... Let me rephrase. When I recapture with the king, he'll take my knight on e2. I can't take with the knight, obviously, because it's pinned. So I'll play knight c2 instead. f4, let's hit the queen. Queen to g2. Let's play the knight back now. Okay, f3 obviously takes advantage of the pinned knight. So I will play knight to e1, target the queen. Okay, Magnus doesn't give away free queens. Newsflash, we'll play knight to e3. Obviously, we drop e2. We're getting kind of swarmed here, and I'm sure he has a clever checkmate up his sleeve in just a moment. Wow, there's actually nowhere safe for this knight to go. That's insane. Okay, we'll just keep running. And we do get mated. All right, let's add another knight. All right, we're back with another knight here. And I think I need to start playing more aggressive now. I have way more resources to pull from. So I think we're on the offense now. Let's play knight to d3. Okay, we're met with d5, knight to c3. c5, is that free? Probably not. Queen to a5. Both of these knights are protected, so that looks fine. Oh, that's really interesting. c5 was just to get e5 on the board. So if I retreat, is that an issue? Doesn't seem like it. Okay, we get knight to c6. Let's go ahead and put some pressure on e5. Wow, he defends. I was kind of expecting e5 so I could sacrifice that knight for those two central pawns, but it might actually understand that that's positionally better for me anyways. Keep developing towards the center. h5 is always going to be a problem. We'll try to hold on to it with these two knights in the meantime. Play knight to b3. Cool, knight to e7 makes sense. Keep developing towards the center. a5, we've got basically the same knights on both sides doing the same task, which I'm pretty happy with at the moment. So g5, and I think I can jump into c6 now. Sorry, that's not c6. Jump into c5 now. Okay, we're met with h4. If I sacrifice, I don't get anything out of it, so I have to retreat instead. Okay, h3, fair enough. There's nowhere for me to safely put that knight, so might as well just let it get captured. Okay, b6. I'm sure he's looking for this push in just a moment, so I'll stop it with a4. Rook to b8, knight to b5 here, probably stopping b5. I need to freeze these pawns as best I can. Okay, knight to g6, probably just with the intent of getting the bishop out. We'll develop our own pieces as well. Whoa, king to f7? Questionable move, I think. Maybe even dubious. Let's play knight to c3. Okay, we get d4. We have 1, 2, 3 knights on this pawn. He's got 1, 2, 3 defenders on it. So we can't win it, but we can trade it for a knight, which is fine. We have extra knights to work with, and really the most annoying pawns are the rook pawns and the central pawn. So if we have to trade knights for those individual pawns, it's feasible. We'll go ahead and centralize the knight in the meantime. Takes, I'll recapture. Knight to f4 looks like it's offering a trade, but the recapture is a fork. So we will not be accepting that. Let's go ahead and retreat the knight. Okay, bishop to a6. I think now we can trade. Takes, takes. This knight is the only one being attacked. But we have the issue of this knight on b5 as well. So let's reinforce it with this knight. Okay, knight to b4. Can I just take? Take? No, because it removes the guard. But it is threatening knight takes. So I'll take with this knight instead. Oh gosh. Okay, I think I might have to sacrifice here. We'll sack. Bishop takes back. Both of these knights are protected, so I should be okay. Well, this one's protected. If the bishop captures, kind of unleashes this bishop. Knight e4 holds on, sort of. If f5, I take on g5. We might be okay here, maybe. It's a very, very large maybe. Let's start putting some pressure. Knight to g4. Bishop moves back, defends f6, which makes sense. Play knight to c4. Okay, bishop moves back to c8, maybe looking for a trade. Let's go ahead and sacrifice. Sacrifice on e5. Check. We've got plenty of pieces on the king now, so let's start using them. Knight to d6. More pressure. Always more pressure. Queen to f8. Let's get this trade on the board. The queen recaptures. I'm kind of wary of this knight because he needs to defend h1 at all times, because our king is somewhat fenced off here. Let's go ahead and play knight to e3. Okay, bishop back to d8. I think this allows knight to d5, which should be pretty strong. Okay, rook to h4. We'll go ahead and grab that trade. And I think I can just centralize another knight. Oh, queen to c1. Okay, that's kind of annoying. Let's play knight to f3 instead. g4 kicks the knight. So we will continue with our attack. Maybe on d4. Okay, bishop to h4. Pins the knight, and I'm not really looking to hang out in a pin. So we'll move up to e2. Takes, I'll take back. g3. I might have to sacrifice for that as well, actually. So I'll play knight to e4. Can we get queen to e8? Hits this knight. Oh, and if I take, check anywhere this rook moves. hits the knight as well. If I play king to e3, queen takes, defends the rook. Maybe I can hit the queen after though. Okay, queen takes on e5. We'll go ahead and play knight back to e2. Okay, g2. And even if I take, pawn promotion. So let's drop this other knight back as well. Rook to e8, putting pressure on the pin. I'll go ahead and grab this pawn because why not? We'll take, loosens this so he can sacrifice the rook for 2 knights. And then pick up this knight. Wow, that's so deep. All right, let's add one more knight. All right, we're back with 13 knights now. Let's go ahead and get started. Centralizing the knights. Put pressure on his position as much as possible. Make this a nightmare for him. Yes, more pressure. Always more pressure. Okay, and I can pretty freely sacrifice knights now as well. So g5. If here, this is protected, so more pressure. f6 forced, pretty much. Well, h6 was another fair option. Play more pieces towards the center. h5, probably looking for this fork. So we'll head back. King to f7, very unintuitive move, but also very amusing. We'll go ahead and stack attackers on the c5 pawn. I have to look for sacrifices at some point anyways, so I might as well try to start them nice and early. If knight back h3, I'll move my knight back to f1 instead, right? Because this is takes, takes, and that's kind of okay to be honest. Okay, we get a bunch of trades on the board. Knight to e7. So we keep developing. I don't want any knights working by themselves. So we'll keep developing knights. Offers a trade, I'll accept. Knight to g4. There's even ideas of check, takes, takes, king moves over, takes, takes, but that's kind of reckless at that point. So let's play knight to a3. There's no dark squared bishop, so I'm probably supposed to try to take advantage of that somehow. Play knight to d3. Just bringing more pieces into the battle. This isn't particularly a specific order of any kind. We'll play knight to b4. Rook to h1 pins me, but I don't think I'm actually afraid of that pin. So what if I take here? Takes, 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 takes. Loses this knight, so I'll drop this knight back first. Okay, and I think now we can capture. Okay, queen to a5, fair enough. Knight to c4 might be necessary here. If check, I can block, so he's probably just going to pick up the knight. Oh, he sacrifices. Okay, and if I take? Oh, I can't take, it's pinned. Wow, that's very frustrating. I did not notice that. There's so many knights to keep track of. It's very difficult. Okay, let's play knight to e3. Okay, I was trying to attack the rook and defend the knight, but we get checked. So we'll play the knight back. Rook back to c8. He walks away with his extra knight. Probably very happy with that. Let's go ahead and continue our development. Knight to e4. Kind of an interesting idea. Okay, I did notice that this knight is free. I'm not that blind. Not yet, anyways. We'll play knight back to f2. Okay, we get that trade. I'm sure these rooks are going to come down at some point. Like rook to c1 here would make a lot of sense. We get g4. There's not a lot of comfortable places for this knight, so I guess he's going to go back. f5 also pushes us pretty far back. If I try to lean into it too hard, maybe check. Drops the knight. So let's play knight back to c3. Okay, we get checked. I kind of have to block. If f4, we cover that. So that should be okay. g3. It's crazy how he just like comes out with all these different attacking ideas. If I move the knight out of the way, g2 I can take with this knight, so that should be fine. Rook to h2. Ooh. If the king moves, we drop this knight, so I have to interpose. Oh, but if I interpose, I lose the knight. Oh, this is just losing a knight, period. All right, let's interpose. We get f4 in this position. Let's play king to f3. Loses this knight. Nothing's really promising here, to be honest. Okay, let's play knight to f3. Takes, takes. Takes, takes. I can't really stop this pawn, but I can try. We'll move out of the way. Gimme. Okay, this knight is as good as gone. No, this knight is defended, so we should be okay. I don't think we're losing yet, weirdly enough. We'll move the king back. Oh, never mind, we are. This pawn is going to be the end of me for sure. All right, let's play check. Naturally, he sacrifices. And we do get mated. Let's add an extra knight. All right, I'm back with my bottomless pit of knights and endless optimism that I will defeat the Magnus bot using them. And I really just need to keep striking in the center. So let's see, g5. I'll target that. Okay, f6, fair enough. We will have to sacrifice at some point. I don't want to do reckless sacrifices, though. I want them to be calculated. Let's go ahead and keep bringing pieces into the battle in the meantime. Bishop d7, sure. Pieces towards the center. I think I can sacrifice here now comfortably. Oh no, I can't. Takes. Bishop takes is free. Okay, so that doesn't work. Let's bring this knight to f2. h5 kicks the knight. I could just sacrifice here, and I think I will. I don't want that pawn to get too far ahead and become a big issue later. Go ahead and target that rook. Rook goes back, fair enough. Bring more pieces towards the center. Let's play knight to a4. I'd like to get this trade on the board. f5. I can't sacrifice for it, so I'll offer this trade instead, and trades are basically always good here. If I take, that should be cool. b5. Sacrifice another knight. Bishop comes to b5. Nobody's defending this guy, so we'll drop him back to b2. I'd like the knights to all see each other in some sense. Knight to c3. We have plenty of defenders on this knight. Knight to h6. Let's keep attacking. More knights in his face. There's always more knights where that came from. I have a bottomless pit. All right, well, oh, I thought that was free for a second. Okay, we'll grab this trade, and I think I need to bring more knights into the attack. I don't want to get too carried away with just playing with a couple of knights. Okay, knight towards the center. This is a super strong spot for my knight, so I should be hanging out just fine right here. Knight to d3. I have to be a little bit weary of these pawns potentially pushing forward. Knight to h5 will target the rook. He targets me right back. Okay, fair play. Can't really say anything to that. So we'll play back. Okay, more knights towards the center. Knight d4 seems pretty reasonable. Queen to f8. He can't get in through this diagonal, so I'm not sure what the point of that maneuver was. Let's put some pressure. Oh, that's what it was. It's to cover c5, so I can't stack more pressure, but I can play knight to b3. Okay, now if I... okay, wow, I think I've actually predicted his idea pretty concretely. Knight to c5, now takes. Isn't all that fascinating, so what about knight a4 first? Okay, rook to h2, we'll go ahead and defend. f4 forces me towards the center. f3, I take, should be cool. I can't just take here. g4, I take back again. I think I'm fine there. g4. Oh, drops this knight. I've just noticed that these knights are super weak because they're all on diagonals. And surprise, surprise, knights don't work like bishops. So this is actually losing this knight altogether. Let's play knight to b6. Hits the rook, defends the knight. Takes, I'll take back. Rook to d8. Okay, we're back on track, I think. Play knight to d4. Rook goes back to h6, knight to e5. Queen to e7. I think we've got him on the ropes here. It looks like he's kind of struggling to find good moves here. What about knight to c6 now? Okay, queen to h7. That looks free. If I take, he takes. I think that's a good trade for me, though. Okay, queen takes on e4. Now I just have to be really careful I don't hang anything. So what about knight to d2 here? Okay, queen goes back. Let's play knight to f4. Okay, queen goes to f5. I think I can just take. Takes, and that should be pretty good for me. Okay, nice. Now we just need to fork him somehow, or put a lot of pressure on his position, which is not going to be easy, but I think it will be possible. Let's play knight to d7 first. Connect all of my knights. Queen to h6. I don't think he really knows what he's looking for here. I'm looking to make some progress with my king, however. Queen to a1. Okay, the king moves up. I think I can play knight to e4, or does that walk into check? No, knight to e3 is fine. Okay, king back. I think he's pretty close to what real-life Magnus would consider resigning. So let's keep marching. What about knight here? What about the check then? King up should be totally fine. Okay, queen to b2 does nothing. It's really interesting that he hasn't pushed this pawn yet, and I think that's kind of a testament to how the bot plays different than a human would. This is ridiculous, to be honest. The natural move here is a5, a4, a3, a2, a1, and force me to kind of get distracted. But I don't think bots understand what distractions are. I mean, I guess they never get distracted. So let's see, how can I set up a good mate here? Let's start bringing my king a little bit closer. Okay, queen to g2. In fact, the reason I didn't play king to g5 was because of queen to g2. We'll play knight to f6. Okay, king moves back. Let's give a little check. King to f8. And I need to put enough pressure on his king that he can't move away anymore. Let's play king to e6. Okay, we walk into check. What about knight to d5 and takes? Check. King here. Knight here. We do lose a knight, and it seems a little pointless, but I think it should still be winning. Cool, we'll jump in with check. King moves over again. Knight to d4. King to c8. I don't want him to get away from me. Let's move our own knight back to e4. Okay, king comes back to d8. He's looking for this escape square. I don't really want to grant it to him, but I might not have a choice here, so I'll play check. King moves back over. Now, which knight do I check with? The only legal knight, that's the one. We'll play check. King moves over. Knight to e7. Funny enough, that pawn was in the way of the queen to a6 check move. We'll play the knight back to knight back to f5. Okay, queen comes to e2. And I think we've got some ideas here, because the king is trapped. So I just need to play this and this. Nice, we get the queen sacrifice, so this is completely winning now. I'm going to play this the easy peasy way, and come pick up my well-deserved pawn. Knight stops the king, so I will take with check, and now I just have to find a way to give mate. So let's see. I think the first step is the king comes in front of the other king. Okay, we'll play knight to b5. Try to cut off his options as best we can here. Okay, we'll give that little check. Okay, we have to be careful here not to stalemate him as well. Because if king to e6, for example, that's stalemate. So let's be extra cautious here. King to e6. I'm not really sure what the idea here is, to be honest. I guess I need to stop him from moving to this square, so how about knight to f6 first? Oh, but he escapes. Okay, let's try that again. I'm sure we can checkmate him on the side. Okay, knight to d5. Okay, we do get opposition, which I think is a good sign. We'll bring another knight closer. King to b2. I don't want him to escape, but I'm not sure I can do much about it. Okay. Check. Check again, king here. Oh, this is actually super frustrating. Okay, I think now we're doing something. Knight to f4. King moves back, so check here. Cool. So far, so good. King to f3 forces king to g1. Okay, fine. Okay, we'll play knight to g3. I need to start restricting the squares that the king can move to, or else I'm never going to get mate. Okay, what about... Oh. Okay, we've got him in a corner now. And if I play, like, knight to e2 here, he just starts walking away. So, knight to f2. Stops this square. Only moves king to g1. We give check. He has to move back. Beautiful mate. Knight to f1. All right, that was a great game. I'm going to admit, knights was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, but we did get it done in the end. If you guys did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing. and I will see you guys in the next one.